The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Shelley, inspiring you to find your why.
And I'm Deborah Monk, empowering you to find your creative voice.
Oh, it's nice to be back, Deb.
Yes.
I know. Did you put your bronzer on today? I mean, I just got back from Mexico. I didn't want to
I did. I put a lot of bronzer on.
And just for the record, ladies, you haven't gone anywhere. You just pre-recorded 10 shows, so nobody knows that you weren't here. They've been watching the show every week.
Oh, yeah, because it looked like we were busy every week.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
We even did outfit changes.
Little secret.
I know that I think we just revealed. We opened the curtain.
Well, then nobody missed us.
Well, because we haven't been anywhere. We've been here all the time.
Every single Tuesday morning.
We go to a tanning salon before we come.
Right?
Yes. Or at least you do. I don't.
So, Deb, we have a great show today, and it's the pitfalls of writing a memoir.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because when I went on vacation, I got a great book that was like an amazing reference book, and it was called The Art of Writing a Memoir. And I thought, all right, well, this will be a good one for vacation to listen to, and student for life. So I'm always grasping ideas from other people.
Brilliant.
And it's just talking about, of course, everybody wants their book to be successful, right? Whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
Sure.
I don't think anybody wakes up to write a book and goes, well, maybe Deb on certain days. If
anyone
sells,
reads
it sells.
Not the right attitude to have, I know. But it suits me sometimes.
We're going to share some tips and some avoidable little pitfalls.
Yes, because when we talked about this, and we had to do it via text, which isn't easy, but as we talked about it, I thought that one of the biggest problems with memoirs nowadays, I think, is that the market has become so inundated with people thinking that they should write memoirs. So I didn't want to cause conflict, but I needed to say what I wanted to say. So what I did is I found an article from the New York Times in 2011 called "The Problem with Memoirs." Oh. A moment of silence, please, for the lost art of shutting up. And so it seems now that everybody who thinks that they have a child or adopted a child or they were a child, they should write a memoir.
Right.
They had cancer, their aunt had cancer, their brother had cancer, their brother had a freckle, and we should write a memoir about it.
Well, because 20 years ago, you'd only write a memoir if you were a rock star or a movie star.
Right. There was a time when you had to have accomplished something to be deserving of other people reading about your life. And in this day of it's all about me, let me show you what I'm doing. I'm so interesting. I have a wrinkle. Well, let me write about it. And so we're going to remind people of how they can determine. They can certainly write the memoir, as some of us here on the Writer's Block have done, but that doesn't mean they should put it out. And so we're going to help them figure out whether they should or should not.
I like that, right?
Yeah.
And they're simple. They're simple, avoidable little mistakes that people can make.
And I think part of the reality of this is the barrier to entry into publishing a book is almost nothing.
Right.
For a couple $1,000, you can be on the market.
Right.
Even for a couple $100, if you really, Rick did not spend much on his book.
I thought his budget was $500.
Uploading himself, so.
But the problem with that is then good books get lost. Because if you go on Amazon right now and you search for memoirs, depending on how you execute it, you'll get either 40,000 up to 160,000. And so it's harder to find a good book now than it used to be because there are just so many not so good books.
Half my bookshelf is bad books that I haven't finished reading. I either bought them because the cover was pretty, or I followed an author and got through maybe a first couple of pages and then thought, well, that looks good on the mantle.
Right.
So number one.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Because this is what you have drilled since I've met you.
I've tried.
Right? Is most memoirs fail because of voice. That is the number one reason.
And we would carry that over to all books. Yes.
That's true.
Voice.
That's true. It's emotional tone, either somebody, especially like you said, if you've got a freckle, right? Somebody had a freckle, they need to write about it. They're cool. They think they're a rock star because they have a freckle.
And if you're really good, you probably can write about a freckle. But for the most of us, we should consider ourselves not that good.
They had talked about too, and when I had done some of my research with some other books, is that you need to get to know the reader. You want to know the inside and the outside of the reader, not just what they're putting on the page. You want to know more about that reader.
The reader?
I'm sorry, the writer.
Okay.
The writer. Okay, let me have another sip of coffee.
I don't give a shit about my reader.
Well, you should.
Buy it or don't buy it, lady. Move on.
Is to know about that author.
Yes.
Because it is a memoir. So they can't just skim over things. They need to have things come to life.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Very true.
Okay. The second thing was to lead up that the author needs to be transformed. Their self needs to be transformed.
Well, that is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that if you didn't discover something as you wrote your memoir, then even you probably don't find it that interesting. And then to me, that has been my rule of thumb. That's been my guideline.
Sure.
If I didn't learn something that I thought was, or even if I did learn something that was powerful for me, but I didn't think it would be that powerful for enough people, then that is my rule of thumb of whether it should be put out. So when you've written it all, and you have to write it all to find out if that's the case.
Yes.
And then as you're going through the editing, if you're still, kind of, and really enjoying the read, then great. And if you're not, then maybe it's time to keep it in the drawer until maybe you have more to say.
Not to be too cocky. Take a good look in the mirror.
Yes.
Right? Because you're going to learn something about yourself when you're writing it.
If you don't, it's probably not that good.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay. Changing over time, we talked about that. The depth and transformation of the entire story. I think this kind of relates to what we just said is if you're just going to continue to be a smart ass about everything and not really lock yourself in a room and get deeper than that, then you're surfacing over. So it's not going to be a good read.
Right.
That reader is going to want to know that person. A bitter book grows tired and a vengeful one grows unreadable.
Very
That
true.
was one quote that I saw that I said, that was amazing. It makes perfect sense.
Right. If you start bitter, you should have, just like a main character in a story, then that character should evolve and somehow get through forgiveness, or they should learn how to forgive the other person, themselves, whoever it is. And so then there's still that hero's journey, even though it's a memoir. Mm-hmm. And if you're a bitter bitch in the beginning and a bitter bitch in the end, you probably should keep it on the shelf.
Why does she look at me when she says bitter bitch? That's there's
let's
no need.
Put two and two
no
together
need
there.
Of that.
No, I actually thought you were giving me the eye. Meaning, I thought, maybe I swore and I wasn't supposed to. I don't know.
No, it's
I didn't
okay.
think the B word was too bad.
It's okay.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think that is absolutely true. The other thing was a pacing problem.
Always pacing.
And
God,
I know
love
that's-
pacing almost as much as voice.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And you also like to rush over sometimes, right?
Because
I did as well.
I'm always afraid of boring somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I recently read, I wish I could think of what it was, but I think it was her son had just overdosed. And so she's kind of she's finding his body, and then she sort of while she's in that room, she takes us back.
Yes.
And I thought, oh God, I wouldn't have done that. Because, I'm in the heat of the moment, you're not really in reality. You're probably not thinking that things. You're probably so frozen and just dealing with the paramedics and everything. But I realized after she took a breath, that in reading it, she had the reader take a breath of, here's this hyper tense moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And instead of keeping us on that high for too long, she pulled us back and made us breathe and then brought us back into the moment. And actually she did it so well that I thought I really need to learn. So pacing is huge.
You'll have to tell me what that was too. And I wonder how long after the incident did she write that book? Because they say that sometimes you've got...
No, it's fiction.
So if you're writing a memoir in the same sense,
you still have
sometimes
to
you
do
need
that.
some distance and time.
Right.
So I can write about things that happened 20 years ago.
A lot easier.
But to write about my brother passing just in this past year has been the hardest chapter in the entire book.
Because you don't have enough distance to have good perspective.
Absolutely.
You're still raw.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and there's another example of where it's good to have a group, and it's also having somebody else, because a lot of times it's hard to tell your own pacing because you either have a tendency to go too fast, which is what I do, or you have a tendency to go too slow.
And bore everybody.
Yeah, you get too deep into we're deep breathing. Eventually I'm going to fall asleep.
Sure. You guys did that with me too in that funeral scene where I had given you one page originally, and you were like, all right, we get
Not
what
enough.
you're trying to say, but we need this one page to turn into 10. And I was
Right.
like, oh, Jesus.
And you did it.
Well, yeah, I had to lock myself in a room and it was ugly for a little while. But
Yeah.
then I came back and you guys said, you got it.
Yeah, exactly.
it.
See, it's
All
worth
right.
it. So it's worth going into that room, getting ugly.
Then the last one that I think is adorable, because I think of a couple of things with you, Deb, is bad sentences. Make bad memoirs. Just a bad sentence. Now, that could go either way. That could go grammatical, where I started out with bullet points and
No sentences.
no sentences at
Right.
all, literally. And sometimes your sentences give us 7 analogies
Exactly.
for the same thing.
Right.
I'm
And
like,
then I
Deb,
figure
we get it. We honestly get it. I swear to God, you don't have to give me 3 more analogies.
Right. But yeah, sometimes for me, I have to write them all to figure out which one is the best one.
Mm-hmm. To make them more colorful, to make them more 3D.
Right.
Like all of those, adding in all your senses to make sure.
Right. A couple other things that I thought of is if you're writing your memoir, no one wants to relive your misery.
Mm.
So if you've had a super happy life and everything has gone, you went skipping to first grade with your long blonde pigtails, and then you met the prince of the
I don't want to
football
read
coach.
that shit either.
Exactly.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me again. Sorry.
If you're going to write a memoir, you probably there's had to have been some struggle, but you can't just keep us in the struggle.
No.
And you have to be careful. There have been a lot of memoirs written about, people who have been sick where they've gotten too much into the details of the medical care.
Right.
And you can't do that either. So you have to be careful that you have to have had a struggle, but you have to still come through it on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So don't just write about how miserable your life is and stay there. Because if it was miserable for you, it's miserable for me. I don't want to read it either.
Sure.
Unless you're going to take us through it.
And all these things are just it's a simple, rough outline. Anybody can break the rules. But,
Right.
I mean, I've had people say, you've got to read this memoir. You've got to read this memoir. And I can't remember. There was 2 that were suggested to me. I did not get through either one of them.
Oh, I know. I remember.
Boring,
Yeah.
boring, and boring.
Yeah.
I didn't care about how many times you walked the dog around the lake. Like, I wasn't real sure where that connected.
Yeah.
But you can lose somebody really fast. So it's just an outline of simple things, which means you need to add those people. You need your lifelines. So you need your writers group, you
Right.
need your editors, but a balance between how many people you have. Too many.
It's just like cooking.
Yeah.
How would I know? I wouldn't know.
Too many opinions, right?
Yes. Oh, wait, I have one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. If
Ready
you're
to play you out.
Yeah, I guess you were. If you're going to jump on the bandwagon of something that's been written about 1,000,000 times, you have to have more credentials. So you have to know more about whatever it is than the other books that have been written about it.
Or pretend to know more about it.
Well, there's a lot.
better
No,
be a
I'm
good
going
writer.
to stick
What are
with
you
don't
thinking?
pretend because that goes back to that me. Yeah, I'm not into pretending. And you better be careful if you're writing a memoir. Look at the James that Oprah book, A Million Little.
Oh, A Million Little Pieces. I'll
Right.
tell you what, I think that was an amazing book.
It was an amazing book.
Amazing book.
But look at he was called on the carpet later for not being completely accurate. However, can a drug addict in the middle of his addiction actually be accurate? So how can anybody
Seriously.
blame him if he
And I think in that case, he might have went through a little bit of hell with the publicity, but bad publicity is still publicity. So
I don't know. I think he was better off just with his Oprah publicity, the good publicity.
yeah.
So I'm going to suggest you don't lie in your memoir.
Well,
All right, there we go,
or try
Jonathan.
not to, right? All right. Well, if you want to hear this episode again or share it with a friend, you can send them to UnitedPodcastNetwork.tv. That's UnitedPodcastNetwork.tv. You can find this podcast in the vodcast video on demand in case you want to watch it. Find this episode and all previous episodes on UnitedPodcastNetwork.tv, and please subscribe. And Deb, we have got a follow-up for what are we going to talk about next on our next show?
I think what we should do next week is you and I, who have both finished our memoirs now, should go over whether we should publish them.
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
And also tell about the process, what we've learned during writing.
I love
so
it.
join us next week as we discuss when you finish your memoir.
The The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.